very end of 2022, and what a year it's been. I'm delighted to be joined by Ali Riyami, consultant and former Director General of Marketing at the Ministry of Energy and Minerals in Oman, Victor Yang, Senior Editor at JLC Network Technology in China, and Laurie Mina, Director for the Natural Resources Governance Institute in Beirut, Lebanon. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Great to see you. Great to see everybody. Victor, let's start with you, please. China making headlines, no shortage of headlines these days, but China, again, last week, making headlines that moved markets, moved oil markets, this whole thing of China maybe reopening, obviously more and more talk that it will be doing so very soon, whether now or early next year. But again, renewed lockdowns in the Guangdong province, etc. Where are we with the zero COVID policy? Are you seeing any real initiative from the government side that it is going to finally loosen up, given all the economic challenges that are there?
Yes. Well, I'm now in Guangzhou, and as you may know, Guangzhou has reported several thousand cases cases on a daily basis in the past few weeks also. I mean, most cases are asymptomatic, but the government has locked down parts of the city, say several districts, including the district where I'm in. So I've been working from home since last Thursday. And I was told this kind of lockdown will last until today, and we wait for further notice. But the good news is that the government is easing some restrictions. Say, in some cities, they have canceled the whole city test. Say, like in Tianjin, they just scrap this kind of test for the whole city. And in the future, if a city reports new infections, maybe just a small area can need to take the test. And the biggest news is that early this month, a local government reported that the virus is no longer COVID. It has become a virus that you can heal from, even you do not take medicine. So this is the first time the government has allowed such a report in China in about 3 years. So This is a great signal that the government is changing its attitude towards this virus now.
Okay, well, I guess, and do you think that is, I mean, you got the medical report you just mentioned, but is it really the reason that you just had riots also against the COVID policy this week, which is something new as far as we know, with outside of China, that's something that doesn't really happen very often. So the pressure is just getting, the economic, social pressure is just getting too much, and the government feels it has to move on. Or is it that President Xi had his conference and Congress, confirmed his term, and now he's feeling more secure to proceed?
Well, the government explained why it continue with this policy too. And a couple of days ago, the ministry responsible for these virus controls said what the government needs to do before opening up is construction of infrastructure, including facilities for dealing with this virus. And he mentioned the hospitals for the Chinese people compared to developed countries, say like just less than 7 beds for every 1,000 people in China. So he said the Chinese government, China still lags behind others in medical facilities. So the government is building up these facilities to prepare for opening up. But it has been doing so, and it's also assessing the development of the virus. So once it is assured that the virus is no longer as deadly as before, and it can handle it, it will open up. Yes.
Okay, well, thanks, Victor. We'll talk more about opening up and what impact that's going to have and expectations for the economy. Ali, good morning. Ali Riyami, good morning again. Let's talk a bit about the oil markets specifically. We saw last week some support come back in to prices, despite the fact that simultaneously we had demand projections again being revised downwards by OPEC and by others. We've had a bit less volatility, relatively speaking, but looking forward to the next quarter, to next year, do you think that OPEC Plus can do a better job, or can they possibly control this volatility as we go forward?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for hosting me again. I think this volatility will continue as long as the reason for it they are still hanging around us. We sometimes hear good news like the one we have from Victor at the moment, and China is easing some some things, and same time we see some maybe could be an escalation in Europe between Russia and Ukraine and Poland now. So there are a mix of uncertainties are there, and this, I think, this kind of things will continue for the coming few months, and and that's what we see the reflection of that in the price. Today we have a drop, or yesterday we saw a drop of almost like $3 to $4, and today we start seeing improvement. So it's changing on a daily basis, similar to the volatility in the market. I think the reasons for this will continue, and I don't see any future in the coming few months until second quarter of next year maybe. But of course, all of this, it depends about next month meeting, OPEC meeting, which is a very important meeting. We don't know what is the output going to be, but I think they will again sit and discuss maybe to reduce more from the cuts. And if that happens, then I think this may help some volatility in the market, because I believe that maybe there is some few extra barrels out there, although that the reports from different places, different organizations, different agencies are reporting differently. But there is no support from the market. There is this fear of getting into a recession, and everybody is talking about now. Nobody is feeling shy talking about the recession, and I've been talking about it for the last 3-4 months. And now everybody is preparing themselves to get into a recession. So this is a fear that always OPEC are putting in the first stage when they talk about the demand of oil and volatility.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the talk about recession has been around for the last few months, and it's coming, and it's hitting Europe already to an extent. OPEC, I mean, it would be interesting to see if they actually symbolically at least announce more cuts next month, because the last announcement certainly caught some by surprise, and again, questioning how real it is in terms of on the ground cuts. So perhaps this time they'll just stay put and perhaps take the time to prove that they're cutting what they've already said they're going to, and see that evidence on the ground. But we'll come back to that. And also I'd like to talk about the price cap that's coming up and this extra sanction on Russia. Laurie, welcome again. Great to see you. Let's talk a bit about Iran, because again, we're also distracted these days by so many things, and we almost forget about some really critical issues on the ground. Iran, obviously, the whole new talk of the nuclear deal is way out the window. I mean, I haven't even heard it mentioned in the last month or two in any sense. Give us an update on where the mood of the region is there, given all the geopolitics that's happening simultaneously. Is that off the radar now in terms of the US and from Iran's point of view, a lot of domestic problems that it's dealing with as well?
So again, thank you for having me. Definitely, Iran. I guess we've been saying that no deal would happen before the midterm elections, and now with the results of the midterm elections, this is one factor to look at, and what the Biden administration would want to do next on that, and on many issues that were postponed because of waiting for the results of the midterm. And now that there is no red control or red wave, so then Biden is maybe more relaxed. But at the same time, the situation in Iran has changed a lot, and these ongoing protests will make it really hard on the Biden administration to really sit down with the Iranians and talk about JCPOA and talk about all these when the people of Iran are being on the streets demonstrating against the regime. So I think that's the main element today why the Americans will be really hesitant to go back to the table. But definitely that is not off their radar, especially like looking what OPEC and OPEC Plus is doing. And, you know, like the clash between many countries within the OPEC and with Russia, definitely, and what's happening with the Americans and the Biden administration. And the threats that the Biden administration had been making, like there will be consequences, all of that. So we think that basically it's not completely out off their radar, but with difficulties. And I don't think anything will happen from now till next year. And next year we'll see with all the changes that will happen, especially economic. And we see if we're really going into recession and what's going to happen with Russia. All of that, it's something that we'll be looking. But I think now the mood will be, let's go to vacation. And in the US now, I'm sure like it's Christmas and happy and holidays, vacation. Yeah. So they're taking it easy on politics.
In the US, but from Iran's point of view, I mean, given the domestic demonstrations that we've seen over the last few months, and they've ebbed and flowed to an extent. There's, I think, a general strike or a strike in Tehran today in the central bazaar, etc. Again, even at the beginning of the protests in September, people said, well, these will go on, but eventually they'll fizzle out. But is that domestic pressure on the government, do you think, is that at all, would that impact at all? You're saying it's a distraction, but it can also impact Iran's moving forward and pushing for the nuclear deal, even as a distraction to that. You know, we're making progress elsewhere. Is that not sort of being factored in?
Look, it is a potential, and I'm sure they're looking into that, like what to give to the US and the Europeans, something that they really want, that they can give to ease pressure on them. Definitely, this is something that they made it happen in Lebanon with the Israel-Lebanon deal, where they thought that, okay, we deliver something to the US that it wants, so that to put less pressure on Hezbollah and the Lebanese political class. So this is an approach that they might take. But what is it that they will put on the table that will make the Americans look good by accepting to sit with them when the people is protesting and the Americans are saying that we support the people of Iran, all of that. So it depends on how much of a concession the Iranians will make. But again, for me, it's like not to forget the main objective. For Iran, they want to have that weapon because they feel that that will be a game changer. Everything else is volatile because one administration comes in, gives them what they want. The second administration comes and removes it under executive orders, all of that. They don't want that. They want to really be a regional force with the nuclear power so that there will be stability and there will not be this ease of doing sanctions or going and sanctioning them, etc., all of that. So that's the main objective that we shouldn't forget. That's why all the rest becomes like just tactics to get to where their real objective is.
Okay, and that, I mean, that it's a really matter of seeing how everyone else, Saudi, US, is going to fit into that and what compromise they can all come to. Victor, just to go back, and I'd like to, Laurie, I'll come back to you on the Lebanon-Israel gas deal. I'd like to talk about how tangible that's going to be. Victor, back to you. Let's talk a bit about China's economy, forward outlook. What's the latest projection for end of this year GDP growth? Is it kind of more or less where it's been the last quarter? And let's more importantly look into 2023, crude oil imports, product quota policy. You know, is there any clarity on that front from the Chinese authorities towards refineries, for example, on how they can plan going forward?
Yes. Well, when it comes to crude imports, we see that imports are going to surge on a month-on-month comparison in the last 2 months. So particularly in November, because of large oil product exports in the last quarter. As you may know, the Chinese government issued large quotas on exports in the last quarter. So Chinese refiners are trying to use up these quotas before the end of this year. So they are oil product exports. When we talk about oil product, we refer to gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel only. And the exports in November could exceed 6 million metric tons. That's over 2 million metric tons for each product. And so this will bolster the country's crude imports quite significantly in the last 2 months. And as for the whole year, but it might still edge down a little bit because of the previous jobs, particularly in the first 6 months. And as for oil product exports, these large exports would be just temporarily just kind of transition because of the challenges to its economic growth. And so we expect the growth will be quite similar to the third quarter the last quarter will be quite similar. So we do not see, we find it hard to achieve this government's targets of over 5% for the whole year. As
Well,
you know, we still
5% sounds pretty high. I mean, the latest estimates I read is 3% for the whole year.
yes, it will be about so. Yes, it will be about so.
And I mean, we just saw factory gate and consumer figures, October figures, I believe, down on the month before. I mean, obviously that's all linked to the COVID policy. But what about next year? What is the outlook? I mean, let's put it in the context of the investment support that the government may be giving back into industry, back into its real estate sector, etc. Is it too little too late to get the economy moving again?
Well, first, it depends how soon the government is opening up. Say, if it opens up early next year, we can see much better demand for the whole year. But if it opens up, well, say, in the middle of the year, after early 2023, so demand may not rebound that much. But on the whole, we see better demand next year. We do not expect to see such tight restrictions next year. And that's a very important factor.
Yeah.
And for the, yes.
Yes, and I mean, and I suppose the oil industry, Ali, back to you, that the producers need to prepare themselves for that, you know, more or less China is going to be a stronger consumer next year than it was this year. And OPEC Plus's sort of outlook on that, Ali, and also in conjunction with Russia, obviously being a supplier within that group, this price cap that's coming up, which a lot of people are dismissing, but more importantly, the oil import embargo, generally speaking, that again is coming into place next month. How much is that Russian supply factoring into OPEC Plus's thinking going into December, January for next year? A lot of people are saying it will actually start to impact Russian production, these sanctions finally. Even though countries like China and India are still taking their oil. Again, you know, is that factoring into OPEC's thinking, or are they just taking it month by month? Let's wait and see.
No, I think, you know, Russia's production and Russian export is a very important, you know, issue that normally it has been discussed, especially after the invasion and also after the sanctions on Russia's crude. So this will be part and parts of any future discussion between OPEC members and OPEC Plus. There is no doubt of that. It's the whole situation, you know, like the last decision and the last statement from OPEC, that they mentioned that we will look into a market on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, and then we review the situation and we will interfere, or OPEC will interfere accordingly. So that's why we have to consider the situation that the OPEC is in, OPEC and OPEC Plus, I mean. They are not really in a very comfortable situation at the moment. They don't know what is the future of demand will be, and they depend on news like the Chinese news, you know, to open up the the country, and then to start the growth again in China. They were depending on the elections in America, the midterm election in America. So there are a lot of uncertainties. The war in Russia, the Irani, deal, which is almost like no deal anymore, and nobody is talking about, like you said. But the situation is very, very difficult, and it is very very difficult for them to take any decision either to increase the production or to reduce the production. So they will wait until they see the numbers. They review the numbers. They review the studies and also the reply that they will get from the consultancies, and they will act accordingly. But what we see at the moment, that there is no improvement. Although that we know that there is a bit of ease in China, but still that is not enough. We need to see a world growth, in the energy sector, and also the economy of the world has to start, pushing the numbers up. What we see now, it is the opposite. So how can you, decide to increase the production in this kind of situation? Although that we know that the sanctions on Russian crude is coming, the 5th of December is just, less than 1 month from now. The cap is being discussed on a regular basis. But nevertheless, I mean, these are all, again, the uncertainties that we are still waiting to see. What are going to be the impact of this kind of decisions will be on the market side?
Yeah, and of course, so many unknowns, and world economy, like you mentioned, Fed policy. Laurie, just back to you, America. Again, are they going to pivot early in the new year, slow down a bit this hawkish approach? The U.S. economy seems to be doing okay so far. So what the Fed's doing is waiting for unemployment to get worse, and then they'll stop. They'll slow down. But Laurie, let's talk a bit about the price cap and its impact on the oil markets. When it comes into place, I mean, it's still being, there's so many uncertainties around it. It's being criticized on many fronts. OPEC Plus certainly doesn't want the price cap in place. It just disrupts their planning. Give us your point of view on that. Will it, is it going to be? Do you think it's due to come in also on December the 5th, along with the sanctions? Is it going to finally be implemented, given that the big consumers aren't going to abide by it anyway?
Look, today, I think the breaking news was that on this planet, there are 8 billion people living, and these people need to be fed. These people need to really have a good life. So I think today, the worst thing is like to have all these divisions in the world. I don't think we can cater anymore to having these divisions and having these conflicts. With the climate change aspect, and seeing that a lot of agricultural land are being completely devastated because of either droughts or because of floods. So all of that is not good news, I guess. So I guess what is good news, it's like we need to all to get together, work together as governments. If I were in a government, in any government, small, medium-sized, or like a superpower, this would be my concern: how to bring everyone together, how to bring everyone's resources together and work together to make the lives of these 8 billion people normal and life. I think India today, when we go back to this cap, so India today is saying that it is the one that has contributed to this growth more than China today. And in one of the articles that you shared with us is that like they grew like 177 million this year, more than the Chinese. So the Indians, if Indians are not happy with what the energy market is happening or what the Americans are doing, and the Indians have been very vocal about like this sentiment globally, like, look guys, I have my people, I'm taking care of my people. I don't care about you, what you do. You're doing things that have consequences on the world, but it doesn't mean that we are going to work with you and side with you. Yesterday, Patrick Pouyanné was very interesting as well. The CEO of Total, one of the major oil companies, he said, look, guys, we in the West, we're 1 billion people. The others are 7 billion people, or 6 at that time. He didn't know that we became 8 billion. He said, they're not all aligned with us. So therefore, putting caps, putting embargoes, going to war, or the Russian, whatever they're doing, we're just not being sided by the Russians, because the Russians as well, they cannot keep on having this Cold War mentality and seeking like all these like going and into a country thinking that they cannot have any consequences invading countries. But I think today things have changed. UAE, Saudi Arabia have changed. They have a say. It's not anymore about like, yeah, the world, Western world has come and taken the oil and gas of these countries, etc., and they impose on them. The world has changed. The behavior should change, and the political behavior should change accordingly, because we have 8 billion people to save, and 8 billion people that we want to make them happy, or else these 8 billion people will eat the politics and the political officials and authorities in their countries. So I don't know what this cap will do. I think we have to move on into thinking about differently.
Yeah, bigger picture stuff. And certainly the war in Ukraine has re-highlighted the shift in geopolitical alliances and balances, and it is a new world we're in. And as you said, regional powers here are having a say and making that felt. And of course, we've got China and India. India, interestingly, is they're saying the only economy that's going to still do very well despite high oil prices. It's going to keep going. Let's just have a quick look at our survey question there. Something that we talked about earlier. Will the sanctions and price cap on Russian oil tighten supply enough to counter the price impact of weak demand? Yeah, I mean, i.e., will that in time now tighten supply, that prices will remain supported despite weak demand projections? I suppose that may impact OPEC's thinking of how they act going forward, and we'll have a look at the results of that in a few minutes. Victor, just back to you on these again, Russian oil. China still taking a lot of Russian oil because it's cheaper than what's else out there on the market. What's the latest there on the discounts China's getting on that? And again, would you see that continuing into next year as long as it's available?
Well, China has actually cut the imports of Russian crude in the past 2 months or so. Say, independent refineries in Shandong, they had cut their imports of Russian crude in the past 2 months because of some issues and because more cargoes were taken by Europe before the embargo takes effect in December. So we expect Russian crude to take a smaller share among China's crude imports in November than in the previous 2 or 3 months. And now crude from the Middle East is taking more shares, say in November too. So this trend has been going on for at least 2 months. So after Russia overtook Saudi Arabia briefly, they say for 2 months, and then it was overtaken by Saudi Arabia again, and this trend has been reversed. So we do not expect Russian crude to account for a larger share in the near term yet. And the discounts have not changed much yet. Say it's about, judging from official data, say about regarding the crude imports from different countries, is about $20 per barrel. Yes.
That's quite large. I mean, that's a big amount. Ali, let's just look at the survey result there. No, 62% say no. Any sort of restrictions on Russian supply will not make up for with the weak demand that's being expected on price. So OPEC may have to act accordingly. Ali, there, just in terms of Gulf supply into Asia, clearly, it is Asia's biggest supplier. But there's been blips there with a bit of more Russian crude coming in. How secure do Gulf producers feel in terms of their long-term demand security, if you like, coming from Asian countries?
Well, actually, so far we haven't seen any differences yet. But I think there is a huge, again, unknown on the future, and it all depends on the cap again on Russian crude and how much and how much volume that Russians will continue, selling to India and also to China. But the competition is already there from day one. although that nobody is talking about and everybody is quiet about it, but the Saudis and the Iraqis and the Russians, they are fighting for the same market. And small players like us, we are being affected. But so far, everything is fine, and nobody is directly affected at the moment. But I think if this is going to continue, and there is no growth, and there is no, enough reasons for any, global, growth in the economy, then I think, we very soon we will start hearing some noise here and there about the market share and the price war and so on and so on. But at the moment, I think everybody is respecting each other. Everybody, we are respecting each other, and we're all partners in OPEC+. So we are trying to play politics, but it will come a time if the situation continue. Then I think we'll soon start hearing some noises, especially from the big ones, from the big producers like Russia, Saudis, the Kuwaitis, the Iraqis, and the Emiratis. There will be definitely if the situation continue like this.
Fighting for market share, and as the price perhaps drops, even more important. Laurie, just back to you to close up. I know we've just run out of time, but we haven't mentioned, talking about market share, US production. Again, not necessarily your expertise, but again, we've, all year people have been saying, what's happening? Why hasn't the US when the supply was really tight before the demand weakness argument kicked in? Why isn't the US industry getting its act together and putting more supply out there? Yes, you can argue there's domestic restrictions with policy, but again, do you see that dynamic? If the demand is there next year, let's assume, is that sort of US production dynamic going to shift, do you think, given healthy prices?
Look, as long as there are these mismatches in statements or contradictory messages between energy security and climate change, and about investment and pushing investors to invest in clean energy, and saying that the fossil fuel era has ended, all of that, you are not going to see any investment put into the oil and gas. And this is what many producers are saying to governments: stop being contradictory in your statements, especially the Biden administration. From one side, pushing for all this green energy, from the other side, pushing for saying that you should stop producing, and then one moment saying that now you have to produce more, all of that for the oil and gas sector. So as long as there are these uncertainties, as long as there are no clear long-term views, or no company will come and put their extra money into investing something that they know that in a couple of years maybe they will be losing, or they will not going to make money. And this is the problem we're facing today. And this is what the Saudis and the UAE, especially in our region, are saying. They're saying we need to invest today in supply, in new investment, because these supplies will be the future supply. If we don't invest today, we are going to face a really difficult future. And then you will see all these high prices, because then if demand continues, because we're not seeing the disruption in the demand the way that everyone wants to think of, like, the economic model hasn't changed much, so that we see a destruction in demand that we require today to stop completely to invest in supply. And this is the dynamics that is happening. That I think there is this division between producers and consumers, or between policies or regarding clean energy or climate change and energy security. So this is it. So you will not see the American companies putting money if this continues, and the same we're seeing for the European even companies, and they're starting to really get annoyed by that. And it's interesting how Total now is the one that is leading that discontent from the European side, saying, guys, this is like, it's too much on us. And I think in Sharm el-Sheikh, they were welcomed. So that was something else, like
that's
to see,
like new compared to last year. And I think what the Russia-Ukraine war has done this year is bring the whole energy security argument front and center. And the conversation that really energy transition has to move in parallel with continued investment in E&P, upstream, and cleaning, traditional conventional fuels. That is without a doubt. Even Biden himself has said, "Come on, everyone, go and produce as much as you can." So that's probably shifted now going forward. Victor, sorry, we'll let you have half a minute, but we've gone over time.
Yes. Well, can I add something about the discount? When I talk about the $20 discount, I was referring to the discount between Russian grade and the most expensive grade 1 month ago. So not necessarily the present discounts for Russian crude. So it might be below the level. Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you
just
for
want
that
to clarify that.
clarification
Yeah.
before everyone
Yes.
goes out and rushes to buy more Russian crude. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Victor, Laurie, and Ali, for joining us this morning. Have a great day ahead, and
you.
we'll see you again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.